Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to Let's Talk About Board Games. I know this is going to be a completely different kind of videos, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I love board games, man, and really good board games. It's a huge part of what I do. Every Tuesday I get together with some friends. Sometimes we play Dungeons & Dragons, sometimes we play board games, and it's always a blast. I like to play them with the geeky friends. I like to play them with, non-geeky friends and family. There's all kinds of great stuff out there. Now, the problem is most people, when they think about board games, they think about horribly bad board games. And the ultimate example of a bad board game is Monopoly. Well, this is Cat-opoly, so this game is slightly less worse because it involves cats. But Monopoly is a terrible game, and I'll tell you why it's terrible. Lots of reasons. First of all, the pacing is stupid. It takes way too long to play. But the real problem is it's incredibly luck-based, right? There's actually, now if you're playing in a super casual kind of way, you might not realize this, but there's kind of just a single kind of mostly correct way to play Monopoly. You land on a property, you buy it. And outside of that, there's not a whole lot going on. The problem is it's entirely luck-based. Who goes first? What dice do you roll? Did you land on a property that you can afford? Buy it. Try not to roll a die that lands you on someone else's property, so you have to pay them. That's not a strategy. It's 100% pure luck. The other problem with it is it involves player elimination. I mean, the whole idea about the game is to have another player go bankrupt, have them go out, and then at some point you end the game because you're the last person standing. Sure, there's all sorts of little variants where you can, just end it after a certain amount of time or whatever, but the real point of the game was to kick everyone out. And so you've got a game that can take hours to play, and someone could go bankrupt in the first 20 minutes, and then they just sort of sit there on the sidelines not doing anything. Crappy game design. And so I'm going to tell you about some board games that are much better. And we're going to start with the sort of granddaddy of what is considered to be German-style board games, or to expand on that, more Euro-style board games. And what is that? Well, first of all, we're going to talk about Settlers of Catan. So this is a game that really created this whole renaissance of board gaming in North America when it was brought over there, but of course, worldwide. And what's the deal with the Settlers of Catan, and what is a German-style board game? You can look up an article about it on Wikipedia, and it'll really tell you what's going on. So these so-called German-style board games, which are not necessarily from Germany anymore, people make them all over the place. They tend to minimize luck, and it's more about strategy. There's usually a little bit of something in there to sort of randomize things, to shake things up a little bit, but it's more about strategy than anything else. And if you're the more experienced player, you will more often win. It's not completely one-sided that way, but, skill matters. But at the same time, the games almost never have any player elimination. You are in it until the end. In fact, most of the time, it will be very neck and neck. It will feel very neck and neck until the very end. And a lot of them involve various point scoring kind of mechanics where you really don't know who has won until the game has ended. The last turn is gone. Now we have to count up points, and people might play some secret at the end point cards to reveal how many points they secretly have hidden there. And then it's the great reveal at the end of who won the game. You've done your best the entire time, but it means that no one ever gets kicked out. Everyone's in the game until the end, which is of course a million times better than anything else. And a lot of them actually don't have much in the way of real direct head-to-head competition. You're not necessarily actively screwing the other player. You don't get that sense of those sorts of bad feelings you get from directly competing with people. This is something you can play with friends who may not want to compete with you directly. Even if you're a better player, generally speaking, it's still very fun. And so there's the possibility of sort of indirectly competing with others, because you're sort of going for shared resources. And it's possible to sort of get in each other's way. Because you sort of got to something kind of first, and then it was oh, I was hoping to get that, well, I'll go and get this other thing instead. But you're not actively attacking the other player, for example. So that's the whole idea. So let's talk about what these various games are, what the themes are, and why you should play them. So Settlers of Catan really is the granddaddy of them all. And what's cool about Settlers of Catan is you play a group of settlers that are settling an area, and it's a map that's made up of these sort of hexes, and it's randomly generated every time. And some hexes will provide you with wheat, some of them will provide you with wood, right, like a forest hex. Some of them might provide you with stone and clay and sheep and different things like that. I'm actually getting the resources wrong, but it doesn't matter. And what you're trying to do is build up little cities and little roads, and you've got these little wooden little structures you can put down, and you're just trying to build a little bit of a settlement, and then you end the game. But the whole thing is based around trading, because you might have access to a lot of wool, where someone else might access for a lot of wood, and you might be like, hey, can I trade you some sheep for wood? And the guy would be like, yeah, I've got wood for sheep, and puns happen all the time when you play this game. So Settlers of Catan is really the granddad. It's not actually my favorite of all these. I'm very happy for what it did. The problem is, it's still, because it involves a lot of negotiation, and I'm still relatively competitive, I sometimes get a little heated with this game. So I actually avoid it sometimes, and I much prefer cooperative board games. So let's talk about a couple of those. Which one I want to start with? Well, that made a big mess. I want to talk about Pandemic. This is the very first cooperative board game I ever played, first one I'd ever heard about, and really there weren't a whole lot of them for some time. So what is a cooperative game? Well, literally you're working together as a group. In Pandemic, I think up to 4 players in the base game. Yeah, 2 to 4 players, but there's an expansion that I think allows you to go up to maybe 6 players. So ideally, the 4 of you are working together to stop a set of diseases from killing everyone in the world. There's like 4 diseases in the game. So you actually represent people who work for the CDC in Atlanta. And you're really working together. You each take a turn, you take some actions, and you're playing against the system. So you've got a big world map, and at the start of the game, there's some disease cubes that are scattered all over. But at the end of every player's turn, at the end of your turn, you're going to flip up a couple city cards and be like, oh my god, okay, Toronto's got another outbreak of disease, and you keep doing that. So there's a system in there for the disease keep getting worse, and you're working to like clear out some of the disease. At the same time, you're trying to research cures. Everyone's got these sort of cards, and you kind of having to trade them back and forth in your turn and make a set of all one color. So there's like a blue disease, a yellow disease, a black disease, and a red disease. I think, yeah, 4 diseases, and I think those are the colors. So you're trying to make these matching sets and use those cards to form a cure, but at the same time you can use those cards to do other things, like get around the map very quickly. So it's a trade-off between expending a card to get somewhere fast, but then delaying getting your cure out. But the whole time you're having to stop the diseases from getting too rampant in one area. So you're spending half your time trying to like treat people who are ill, and the other half of your time working towards the disease. And again, those are sort of conflicting things because you only have a certain amount of turns going on. And there's lots of different ways to just sort of lose the game outright and basically have humanity die to a massive plague. It's a great way, a great fun way to coordinate and collaborate with people in a common goal. And most of the time, especially early on, you will lose. And that's cool. Amazingly enough, it's a great story to tell. Oh my god, the whole world is dead, and isn't that exciting? Let's play again and try to do better this time. There's selectable difficulties and all types of different things like that. If you do want to shake it up, there's an expansion for this. Again, I think it adds more players support and also the possibility of secretly being like a bioterrorist, I think, so you're actually working against the players. But honestly, the base game is fantastic. It's super easy to learn. Very, very simple mechanics, and I really recommend this to a lot of people who haven't played anything beyond something like Monopoly or something like that and want to shake things up. Friendly game, hard game, but simple game at the same time. Really, really good. Talking about cooperative board games, the next step up might be something like Arkham Horror. This is a Cthulhu-style horror game where, again, you're cooperating with other players to fight off an elder evil from, beyond the pale of whatever, horrors men were not meant to understand. And this is a bit of a role-playing game, actually, because when you start off in this one, which is set in the town, right? There's a giant map of a town in here. There we go, all kinds of different, spots where you can be. But at the start of the game, you get assigned a character, and there's a giant stack of them. Well, some of these are monsters, but most of these are characters that you can play. So, for example, at the front here, we've got Joe Diamond, the Private Eye. And he's got a certain amount of sanity and stamina because, of course, being a Cthulhu game, a big part of it is not going crazy and losing your mind. And he starts off with a certain amount of money and some clue tokens. And he starts off with a gun, for sure, plus some extra common items at random. And he's got a special ability of hunches. Joe rolls 1 extra bonus die when he spends a clue token to add to a roll, right? And you've got Ash Pete the Drifter and Carolyn Fern the Psychologist, Monterey Jack an Archaeologist, Jenny Barnes the Dilettante. And everyone's got something slightly different. And so you're working together against some great, horrible evil. It is technically possible to die in this game, in which case your character goes away, and then you just grab another character and keep on playing. So again, no player elimination. And sometimes you'll lose, and Cthulhu will show up and devour the world, and sometimes you will win. You'll close all the portals from the nether worlds and save, the world from being killed by otherworldly forces. It is a more complicated game than Pandemic. It's got tons of little tokens and cards and mechanics, and it can be a little slow at first, if they haven't played, because the rule book is quite big. And I don't have any expansions for this, but there's got like 4, 5, 6, 100 of them. I don't know, and they can really expand the world. But this is really, really good. And especially if you're playing with people who like kind of more role-playing games and who are maybe gamers who can understand slightly more mechanics. It's not impossibly hard, but it's pretty good. But it's a little bit more time-consuming than Pandemic. Pandemic, they say 45 minutes. Now, they say that. And I suppose if you're with an experienced group of people, you can play it in a very minimal amount of time, but usually there's at least one newbie in the group, which slows everything down. So in practice, Pandemic might take like an hour and a half to play a game. And then with Arkham Horror, I don't know what the box says. Probably says like an hour or two. So really you book like 4 hours to play through the game. But it's great fun. It's fantastic. Now, I have one more cooperative board game to talk about, but it's a cooperative board game with a twist. So, the Battlestar Galactica board game. And when I played this game, I said this game has the best mechanics I've ever seen in the board game. It was the best up until I played Agricola, which we'll get to soon. So Battlestar Galactica. Now, ideally, you've seen the TV show, which would make this much better. The concept of the TV show is mankind invented robots, the robots rebelled, and kind of killed everyone. They attacked humanity and like nuked all the planets and killed like billions and billions and billions of people. And the only humans that are left are in this handful of ships. They're just running. They're just gunning for it. Ideally, they're looking for some planet called Kobol, and they're trying to get there, right? Because to escape. And the whole time they're being pursued by this evil Cylon fleet of killer robots. But the twist on the TV show, at least the new TV show, not the one from the 70s, is that some of the Cylons actually look like humans. They're like sort of human-robot hybrids or something like that. And they're hidden among the humans. And that's what this board game is. So ostensibly, it's a cooperative board game where everyone is working together as a member of the crew. And they're all people from the TV show. You can play as Admiral Abdama, or you can play as President Roslin, all the different characters from the show. And you're working together to try to maintain your fuel, your food, your morale, your population, not run out of any of those, which would cause you to lose. You're trying to deal with crises at the same time. There's political events and all kinds of nonsense like that you're all having to work together to do that. And then every now and again, some Cylon ships show up. So all of you who are like pilots, like Starbuck over here, you get into your Vipers and you go out and you fight the Cylons until you can spool up the FTL drive and jump out to the next destination and eventually, hopefully, get to Kobol. The twist is there's these loyalty cards that get dealt out at the beginning of the game. So everyone gets one. You pick up the loyalty card. And everyone, it's like, okay, listen, everyone. We're going to pick up our loyalty card. Just look at your card. Don't look at anyone else. Be straight-faced, poker face. We're going to look at it for 10 seconds. Then we're all going to put it down. So you pick it up. Most of the time, the card will say, you are not a Cylon. But for some of you, the card is going to say, you are a Cylon. And you put the card down. And there's a big part of the mechanic in the game is secrecy. Even if you're all human or whatever, you're not allowed to tell anyone what you have in your hand in terms of cards that you can play out to make things happen. But you know that some of the players might be Cylons, and they're secretly trying to screw you. So it's a cooperative game, except the people on the Cylon side are on the opposite side of the people on the human side. And this game can be played, I think they say 3 to 6 players. And really, the more players, the better. I think it really makes it much more interesting. So, and there's this mechanic where when a crisis happens, you're all sort of playing cards into the middle, and some cards help and some cards hurt, but you're playing them all face down. And so when you're trying to resolve the crisis, and you pull them up, and you realize that like there's like 2 bad cards in there, you're like, who played these cards? But there's also, you put a few cards from the deck into the hand, so you don't know if those cards just happen to come in from the deck and are just randomly happen to screw you, or if there's someone actively trying to screw you. But the awesome twist, if you've seen the TV show, is some of the Cylons are sleeper agents. They don't even know they're Cylons at the beginning of the show, which is part of the drama in the show, in that like you're watching the show and you're like, all these people are all working together, and then there'll be one episode where all of a sudden like someone like activates and realizes, holy fuck, I've been an evil Cylon this whole time, and now I'm going to go out and, like, screw everything up. And halfway through the game, the same thing happens again, because halfway through the game, another round of loyalty guards get passed out. So sometimes, you guys have been suspicious of each other the entire time. You might have even thrown someone in the brig because you assumed they were a Cylon, And as it turns out, everyone was perfectly human the entire time. But halfway through the game, again, those loyalty cards get passed out. And then for sure at that point, someone's going to be a Cylon. And they may have played half the game thinking they were human. All of a sudden, they get told they're a Cylon. And now they've got to play on the other side. And there's a mechanic for like revealing or being revealed that you're a Cylon. And then you sort of, your character on the ship gets killed, but then you get to still do stuff on the Cylon homeworld. And it's very exciting. A very, very, very good game. Early on, when you first start playing this game, the system, much like playing Pandemic, the system is probably going to screw you. The humans are actually going to have a really, really hard time. But later on, once you've played a session or two, then you sort of get the handle of it. And then the humans have a relatively easier time. The Cylons have to be craftier and craftier and craftier to fight things off. So it's pretty good. My only complaint about this is if you're playing with 4 or 6 players, there's this weird mechanic with something called like a Cylon Sympathizer card, which causes you to play in all kinds of stupid and dumb ways. There's actually an official rules variant, if you look online, for playing without the Cylon Sympathizer, where you take that out, and instead the human fleet starts with slightly fewer resources to balance things out, and I think that's much better. But other than that, the game is really well optimized at like 5 players. Very, very, very well done. And with 5 players, by the end of the game, 2 people will be guaranteed to be Cylons, and I think that's really the sweet spot. But you can play 4, 5, or 6. You can play 3, but yeah, 4, 5, or 6 is the way to go. Now, there are 2, maybe 3 expansions for this game. I have one of them, and it's definitely the one I would recommend getting. You don't need it for your first game through, but the second time, there's the Exodus expansion. The first one, I think, was the Pegasus expansion, which adds the Pegasus if you've seen the show, so there's a whole other Battlestar out there available to play on, plus some extra characters that you can choose from at the start of the game. And Exodus also adds some extra characters, and it adds, it's sort of like 3 mini expansions. It's one. There's 3 optional rule sets, and the one I would specifically recommend you play with is the Cylon Fleet optional set, because in the base game, the Cylon Fleet can be kind of bursty. You can, like the first time we played, we went through like 90% of the game without a single Cylon ship attacking us, and then we got like 3 in a row, and it was really weird. And so this helps kind of smooth out that experience dramatically by having an extra board on the side where the Cylon fleet sort of builds up and builds up and builds up and then comes, and it makes it a little bit more regular, also more predictable because you can sort of see it coming, so you know when to start stressing about different things. So I think it makes it a much more enjoyable game. But yeah, so I thought that this had the best mechanics in terms of how various problems are resolved and how you move your units around on the board, which is like the actual Battlestar, and also Colonial 1, which is where the President lives. And, very great. Again, until I played Agricola, which is, this is a heavy box set, which, for my money, I think is the single best, most interesting mechanic ever. And the problem with this one, pitching this to people, it doesn't sound very interesting, because you describe it, what's the game about? Well, you're playing as a 17th century farmer, and you have to build your little wooden huts, and raise crops, and tend to your sheep and stuff. Listen, this game is fucking amazing. It's so good. I can't even tell you. It's by far our favorite game to play in my gaming group. And so the amazing thing is, okay, you start off, and yeah, you've got your little sort of homestead, your little plot of land. You've got your little house with a couple of rooms and a bunch of empty fields. And you've got 2 people. And when it's your turn to come around, you play one of your people down. Then your turn comes around again, and you play your second person down. Well, eventually you want to grow your family, and as you grow your family, it means you get more actions in one round. Then, when you got a kid, you've grown your family, then you'll also be able to put them to work. So now you've got 3 actions this turn, and then 4, and then eventually 5, which is the absolute maximum. So that's very cool. And at the same time, you're building stuff all over. But what's really excellent about it, and it's going to be a little hard to describe here, but and when you're teaching someone the game, they say, well, how do I do whatever? How do I build fences so that I can have cattle? So that might have been a bad example. Where's the actual action board here? Where's the one I'm looking for? That's not it. That's not it. Problem is, these are all 2-sided. Apparently, I grabbed all the wrong ones. Oh, there we go. Grab one of these. Right? So how do you do anything? Well, everything on the game board is represented by these squares. So, it's getting a bit of a glare. But like, let's say you've got an occupation card in your hand, right? And you've got these. So you might have an occupation that says you're a super baker or something like that. And you're like, well, how do I play? Well, what you have to do is you have to put your dude on the token that says one occupation. You put it here, and then you get to play your occupation card. And what's interesting, and again, this is the sort of German-style thing where you're not directly competing. Well, if you have played on this square no one else can play on that square. So if you really want to play an occupation, you're going to want to play it early so that no one else can play there ahead of you, and then you've got to wait until the next round before you can get there. Another little things, if you need food, there's day laborer, and then take a grain. This one lets you build a minor improvement, but also lets you take over as the starting player. Because, right, most games, who you roll maybe to see who goes first. That player starts, and then it goes around, and then around, and then around, and sort of the first player always gets to go first for the entire game, in a sense. But in here, there's a square that lets you take over as the first player. So in the next round, you will start first. And considering the fact that, you might be thinking, okay, next round I absolutely positively have to play an occupation. Let's take the starting player. So the next round, I will start first, and I will have the pick of everything. I will be able to play whatever the hell I want anywhere. And it's really interesting. And you start off with just a handful of actions you can take, and then every round, see, that's what these sort of, well, not this one, but just an example, these squares, a card will get played here, and that will open up an extra action. So there'll be a card here that says you get to take one sheep, for example. And so that's, because at the beginning of the game, there's no livestock. But then very quickly that starts to unlock. And some of these squares actually add up. Like this square here is an action where at the beginning of the round, you put 3 wood tokens. Again, that glares, makes it a little hard to see. But at the beginning of the round, you put 3 wood tokens on here. If no one ends up taking this wood, well, the next round, you add 3 more wood. Now, all of a sudden, it's worth 6. So ideally, you would like to wait until they've got quite a hefty stack of wood before you take it, and then all of a sudden, someone might grab it before you do. So you're always having to micromanage, or not micromanage, but sort of make decisions as to when you should grab this square. And again, if you're first player, you get to really take advantage of that. And there's tons of cards. There's actually, there's all these cards, but they come in 3 variants. There's the easy deck, the interactive deck, and the complex deck. And you get to choose which cards you play with. And first of all, it means there's lots of replayability because at the beginning of the game, you get handed out. Each player gets handed out 7 occupations and 7 minor improvements. And that's it. You don't draw anymore later on. So you look at that starting hand, and that really gives you a hint as to how you're going to play at this game. So this game, you're like, oh, I've got a lot of things that rely on having a lot of clay, for brickworks and things like that. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to corner the clay market. And then next game, you get a bunch of cards. You're like, oh, this is going to be really good for growing grain. That's what I should optimize because I'm going to be really good at baking bread, for example. And so lots of replay value, especially as you shift the decks around. Let's put that one aside. What else do I want to show you? I actually want to show you a non-card game. Non-board game, but still falls under a very similar auspice. So this one's called Illuminati, the Game of Conspiracy. This thing is so much fun to play. So it's a bunch of cards, and you're playing as the secret powers that are vying to control the world. You're playing as the Bavarian Illuminati. You're playing as UFOs. You're playing as the network, the computer things. You're playing as the gnomes of Zurich, who are just trying to make tons and tons of money. And the game is played out by trying to control different organizations. So, for example, here's the Federal Reserve card. So you can go and claim the Federal Reserve. And it's got these little arrows, right? So if I found an actual Illuminati card, which I'm not going to look for, but you've got these arrows. So your Illuminati card has 4 arrows coming out, one on the top, right, left, and down. And so you connect these in there. So the Federal Reserve, this is the incoming arrow. You can see it's an arrow that goes in. So this has got to be attached to your organization. Let's just pretend this is your Illuminati card, right? So you got to attach it that way. But the Federal Reserve has arrows out. So the Federal Reserve can turn around and decide to control copy shops. Federal Reserve secretly controls copy shops. Hey, maybe to prevent photocopying of money. I don't know. So the Federal Reserve then controls that. Right? So you've got the out arrow going that way. And they each have special abilities, and they each have special traits. Like the Federal Reserve is a government type of card. Again, kind of hard to get in there without the glare, but it's got the government trait there. And so it has an easier time controlling other government cards, for example. Copy shops are peaceful, so they're opposed by aggressive things. We've got liberal, which is opposed by conservative. So the flat earthers are both weird and conservative. The fraternal orders are conservative. The moral minority are conservative, straight, which is opposed to weird, and fanatic, which are opposed to everything. And so there's that sort of thing. You can play to control organizations, but also destroy them. So things with opposing traits are good at destroying things. And so you win the game. Everyone can win if they control a certain number of organizations, but every Illuminati also has a personal victory goal. So, for example, the Servants of Cthulhu, I think is the name. They also win if they're able to destroy a certain number of organizations. And the Gnomes of Zurich will win if they reach a certain amount of money in the bank. And all these little things like that. The UFOs are cool because they get a secret victory condition. They can choose any victory condition that another Illuminati uses at the beginning of the game, and then write it down and then keep it secret. And then you don't know what victory condition they're going for. Some people want to control 5 weird groups. Some people want to control 1 group of every type. And so it keeps it really interesting. And this one, you're certainly fighting each other. And there's a little bit of an elimination mechanic, but it's not, I've never seen a game where someone got outright eliminated from Illuminati. And so usually you're in it sort of right up until the end, and people, you can influence each other. So if I am playing the Gnomes of Zurich and I have decided to go and attack the network, well, I could convince the Bavarian Illuminati to help me on my side. Meanwhile, the network is trying to convince the servants of Cthulhu to come in on their behalf. And so you get all these like machinations and a lot of negotiation. You can do all kinds of side deal. You can renege on those side deals and do all kinds of awesome things like that. It's a great game. I'm going to talk about another one that is absolutely not a geeky board game, but I want to mention it. Apples to Apples is another card game that is fantastic, and everyone can play this. You can play this infinitely drunk, and it's incredibly, incredibly fun. Great party game, just matching words and being funny. And look it up. If you've never played Apples to Apples, frankly, just get a set of Apples to Apples. You'll use it at like your next family Christmas party or whatever, because everyone can play Apples to Apples. Another game. Oof. God, this is going longer than I thought. Small World is a really nice game. Now, what's notable about Small World, there's another YouTube show out there called Tabletop, hosted by Will Wheaton, and Small World is the very first game they covered on there. And it is a great game. It's sort of a world domination kind of game, but what's cool about it is you play as all these fantasy races. Let's open this up so I can find an example for you. You play as all these fantasy races, but they're always different because they use these pairs of stuff like... Oops. So we've got we'll have the pillaging Amazons, for example. Okay? We'll have the seafaring ghouls. We'll have the merchant ratmen. And so the race has a special ability, and the add-on, the adjective, has another special ability. Well, actually, the ratmen don't have a special ability. They're the only ones that don't have a special ability, except that what they do is they just start with huge, vast numbers, as opposed to the others, right? Like, the Amazons are cool because they're really good at being quite aggressive, because you effectively get some extra people that you can use when you're fighting offensively, but not so much defensively. So they're really fun. And you're working to control this world. It actually comes with... I think 4 different variant maps depending on how many players you're playing with. And what's cool about it is at some point your race will run out of steam. So there's a bidding process at the beginning where you have like a certain amount of races laid out. You see them all. And then you're like, you're first player, so you sort of get your pick of the litter. But the thing that's cool, at any given point, the race that's sort of at the bottom of the stack is free. And all the other races, like if I were to pick the Tritons up here at the top, if I were to pick this guy, I would have to put 1 gold on the Amazons and the Ratmen. And so even if the bottom combination sucks, well, eventually it'll accumulate a fair amount of gold sitting on there. So not only do you have to pay for the ones near the top, but the ones at the bottom start to become more and more and more lucrative. So there's really neat mechanics operating that way. But regardless of what race you take, you will generally run out of steam at some point. And what you can do at that point is you can put your race into decline, which you do by just flipping your race over. And at that point, you no longer really control your race. Although any territory that they have taken, they still possess, and you still keep earning money on until basically until the end of the game. And then you go and you pick a new active race. By the end of the game, you may have played 3, maybe even 4 different races. And there's limits on how many you can have, operating at any given time. But basically, you can keep earning money on all these races. And it's really interesting. Sometimes you'll find yourself, because it's convenient, fighting your own previous race for territory. And anyway, it's really fun. It plays really fast, and it's really simple as well. And I find that you can get a lot of people into the game just because the races are kind of interesting. You can play with a lot of different people, because who doesn't want to play the alchemist giants and the seafaring trolls, right? It's cool. Next game. So, speaking of games that have been covered on Tabletop, we've got Alhambra over here. Alhambra is... I don't know how to describe this game. The Alhambra is a Moorish building in Spain when it was controlled by some of the Muslims there, like a big sort of palace, castle shrine temple thing. I don't know, whatever. But it's a really, really simple little like tile building base game, and again, very, very non-competitive, where you've got these sort of tokens like this that you use to build a little castle based on, it's got these little like black borders, those are walls, and then they also have different symbols, and you're trying to sort of lock them together to build a shape. And it's a bit of bidding process, because at any given time there's like 4 of these little things out, and they're all being produced by different workers, and you need to pay the workers in their own currency. So you're having to like pick up some currency, and then you're making sure it's like, oh, okay, I've got enough ducats to pay for, you know, the next arcade or the next garden, next fountain that I want to use to expand my little Alhambra. And then there's a few scoring rounds, and your score partially based on how much of a wall you've got, but also if you own the most towers, then you get points for that. And it's incredibly simple. It's very fast to play. And again, it's one of these things that is kind of hard to sell people on based on the description, but every single person I've played this with have had a lot of fun. This says it's 2 to 6 players and 45 to 60 minutes. And honestly, I believe that. Again, if you're playing 6 players and a lot of them are noobs, then the first game will probably take more than 60 minutes. It might double that. But other than that, it's very, very fast to play. Here's another fantastic game, Ticket to Ride. Specifically, this is the Europe version, but they're basically the same. I love train games. I've always loved like Train Tycoon and Train Simulator, things like that. And this is it. You've got like a map of some part of territory. The base game of Ticket to Ride is sort of US and part of Canada, and then the European version is, well, you know, Europe. From over here we've got the Iberian Peninsula, and it goes all the way over to Moscow and Kharkov and Sochi. Hey, just in time for the Olympics. So over on the east side, and what you're doing, you're playing. You represent railroad moguls who are trying to build railroad tracks all over the place. And you've got all these trains, and you build railroad tracks, and it's awesome. And at the beginning of the game, you get these cards that show you destinations. Like, you will get bonus points if you manage to build a train from Edinburgh down to Constantinople, for example. That would be worth a lot of points. And so you're trying to do that. And again, it's not directly competitive, but there's a limited number of sort of tracks that you can build on. And so someone else might build where you want to build, so you're forced to go all the way around and weird things like that. The Europe version of this does add a few extra features that the standard Ticket to Ride doesn't have, like these little stations and things like that. And I think that makes it a slightly better game, and it's very, very fun. Again, it's one of these games, it takes like 5 minutes to explain to someone. That's it. Those are all the rules you need, and then it becomes an awesome strategy, fun time game. And I don't know what that says for the time on this one. It's not a super long game. It's not like mega duper short, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have the thing that says how many players. Oh, there we go. 2 to 5 players, 30, 60 minutes. Again, you know, especially if they're newer players or people who like to take a lot of time to think on their turn, it can take a little bit longer, but it's actually not a very long-paced game to play. If you know anyone who likes trains, this is going to be great. And even if they don't, if they just like geography, it's awesome. And one more game. One sec. We're going to close out with another cooperative board game. But this one, Space Cadets, is different, because one of the traps you can fall under with something like Arkham Horror or Pandemic or even Battlestar Galactica, again, you can't trust anyone in there, but you can still fall under the trap where there's one person that sort of directs a lot of the actions. Like, oh, listen, I've played before, I'm the alpha at the table, I'm going to, on your turn, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And sometimes you can feel like you're not necessarily playing on your own. You're just listening to what someone else is telling you in Pandemic and whatnot. And it depends on your group and the mechanics. Usually it's not a problem, but it's sometimes risk. But what's great about Space Cadets is you're not going to fall under that trap, because Space Cadets is about having a bunch of incompetent people fly a spaceship. Yeah, so if you've ever played something like the Artemis computer game, it's going to be relatively samey. And what's great about this is very Star Trek-y. You know, you've got, I mean, even on the cover, it looks kind of like that. And everyone takes on a role. Someone is the captain, someone runs engineering, someone runs weapons, someone runs helm, someone runs the sensors, the tractor beams, damage control, and the FTL drive. Sorry, it helps to think if I stare at the ceiling for some reason. And yeah, so everyone's got one of those. If you don't have like the full complement of players, someone might be playing more than one station, and that's totally okay. And the reason you don't get a sort of table captain problem or an alpha person running the entire game. Well, first of all, there's an actual captain. Someone's role is actually to be captain and sort of set a general strategy. Let's go vaguely in that direction. And I say vaguely because the way you do everything is each person at each station has their own minigame, which they have to play in 30 seconds. There's a little timer. You flip over the timer, and then everyone has to play their own minigame to try to get their station, to run properly. And there's little puzzles and things like that. It's really quite cool. So if you're playing as, trying to think of a good example here. Oh, this baggie here is going to be great. This is an example if you're playing as the weapons officer, right? You've actually got a two-part turn on your phase. Oh god, I'm going to lose all my stuff. Right, so the weapons officer, you're trying to load torpedo bays first. So you're going to draw one of these cards that has kind of a Tetris-y kind of puzzle on it, and then you're going to have all these little pieces, and what you're going to try to do is stick these pieces onto the card, and you're going to try to fill it up completely by finding all your proper bits and pieces to completely cover a card. And if you've done that, you've loaded a torpedo bay. And depending on how much energy engineering is associated to you, you might have more than one of these. Now, you might not be able to complete all of them in 30 seconds, but you can probably do 2 if you're good. Sometimes you can do 3. Sometimes you can't even do 1. Depends on your sort of shape recognition brain algorithm. But then you've loaded your torpedo bays. And then to follow that up, you've got, I'm not going to pull it out, but to actually fire the torpedoes, you've got this like long track like this, and then you've got this little like hockey puck thing that you literally pishnut and try to, get in a certain spot to score damage on the enemy. And they're all like this in different like fun ways. The tractor beam game is actually like a game of like memory. You've got everything face down, you turn one up, it's like, okay, this is a purple 4 and this is a yellow 2, so those don't match, and you keep going, and there's shapes and things like that. So there are all these little mini games that you play, and half the time you end up accidentally piloting yourself into an asteroid field and getting shot up by enemy ships, and it's hilarious, awesome failure waiting to happen. And it's great fun. It's a little finicky, and certainly it works better if you're playing with people who are into like the Star Trek kind of thing. It's got that right kind of vibe and the right kind of humor, I think, associated with it. But it's a really well-designed game. If I have to suggest one board game that you have to buy, and you haven't really played this sort of stuff before, I'd recommend getting Pandemic. Pandemic, I think, is a great way to introduce people to a new style of gaming outside of like Scrabble and Monopoly, which is god awful. And Ticket to Ride isn't. No, I would say Pandemic, and Agricola. If you're with people who might be gamers a little bit more, people who like to play D&D or Magic the Gathering or anything like that, anyone's got that sort of potential, pick yourself up Agricola. It's fantastic. You can't go wrong. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this Let's Talk. Do leave in the comments down below if you've got suggestions for other games that people or me should potentially try. And thanks for watching. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.